In the incredible early years of the Victorian gold rush, people were living and working under truly extraordinary circumstances. Thousands were flocking here in a frenzy with just one thing on their minds: gold. Their only objective was to pry their fortunes from the depths of Victoria's rich ground. The early gold rush, with its harsh conditions, considerable adversities, and no small amount of adventure, created a generation of men unlike any other. The people who made their way to Victoria in the early 1850s experienced something that is not likely to be seen again. The entire state was turned upside down. Seemingly endless ounces of gold were being pulled from the earth, and everywhere they turned the air was thick with the excitement of gold fever. These diggers, regardless of their previous positions in life, suddenly had the opportunity to strike their fortunes through their own labor and reveled in the freedoms of self-employment. They abandoned their previous lifestyles and found themselves separated from civilization and society as they knew it. They drifted from place to place in their search for gold, constantly excited by the very character of their occupation, living in the bush or in tent cities at various rushes, which often popped up overnight. To try your luck at the diggings was a very appropriate phrase, as it was often a case of luck when it came to the sinking of shafts. Men could spend weeks digging their shaft only to bottom out and realize they've missed the gutter, it having changed its course and deviated away from the line it was formerly taking. But the lucky ones could strike riches beyond the scope of their imaginations. Some were sensible with their newfound wealth, but others resorted to a debauchery and extravagance which they'd later regret, supposing at the time that there was plenty more where that came from. After the gold rush ran its course, many of these adventurous spirits turned to other professions to make ends meet, some making tucker, others accumulating great wealth from their trades. But there were plenty of diggers who did not let it go, who spent the rest of their lives fossicking on the fringes of society, enjoying the independent, free lifestyle they experienced during those incredible early years of the gold rush. These enduring, pioneering diggers were recalled in the newspapers in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, where their strong spirits and fierce independence was remarked upon, and their quirky characters recalled with fondness. I'd like to share a few extracts from these articles with you, which describe the men of those remarkable early years as they were in the final years of their lives. Some of these articles were written while these diggers were still alive, and others were written some years later in sentimental recollection. Imagine then 40,000 hardy adventurers roaming over the hills and gullies of old Bendigo, with their brains on fire by the prospect of digging gold, pure gold, out of the earth, just like digging potatoes. That at least was the new chum's notion of gold digging. Prospectors were out in every gully, and calico tents dotted the ranges and flats below. In the day, the forest resounded to the blows of the axe and the singing of the diggers at work. At night, the tall, gaunt trees were the silent witnesses of the carousals and of the lonely vigil of the fire lit in front of the tent. The free and independent spirit of the gold digger is well known. He will suffer any privation or inconvenience and feel happy so long as he retains his freedom. Will the old days ever come again? The calico tent, the jovial circle around the campfire, the adventures and narrative of adventures, and above all the blessed freedom, perhaps not to be found elsewhere. The gold digger of today finds his representative in the hatter or fossicker in the worked out gullies. He is the true descendant of the pioneer in Australian alluvial gold mining. The latter would sooner live upon a crust so that he possessed freedom and had no other will but his own to obey than wallow in luxury and be the servant of a man. But the old fossicker can now barely find gold enough to keep body and soul together. In the outlying gullies beyond the confines of the Goldfields cities, upon the fringes of settlements which overlap the division of town and shire, or wholly enveloped in the shade of the bush, may be found the dwelling places of some of the last of a great and adventurous race. Every now and again one reads in the daily papers that, early in the morning of such and such a day, an old man was found dead in his hut in the bush near this or that place, and to only a few does the announcement appeal in its true significance. The newspaper reporter merely heads his paragraph with the conventional sudden death, and the average reader passes it over as a fact too unimportant for a moment's thought. To the Goldfields pioneers, however, each succeeding item of the kind looms larger. It shows that another of the old order has gone to his rest, and that one by one, the stalwart band of the 50s is fast approaching its end. At various points along that almost continuous chain of shallow workings, from Denali north to Malayagal and south to Maryborough, It was always possible to find fossickers, relics of the 50s and 60s perhaps, who were mutely pleading with Providence for just one more chance to strike it rich. Here and there among them was a veteran of the Eureka Stockade, sustained by memories and a rugged constitution. None of these old-timers sought gold for the sake of riches. What use was wealth to men, bachelors for the most part, who had few years to live? They sought gold at that stage because of the pioneering spirit within them, because, like any explorer or any scientist, the lure of discovery impelled them onward. They asked to the end, only for that one more chance. The old soldiers of the diggings are no longer on Denali. The last of them faded away some 20 years ago. But those who knew them will tell you still that as they gaze upon a mud brick chimney that marks what was once the hut of a grey-haired fossicker, they can hear the old man proclaiming that all would be well with Denali if he were given time to discover his new goldfield. When the tide of the gold rush receded from Victoria, little colonies of stranded adventurers were left behind in many bush townships to eke out their lives, seeking only food, warmth and shelter, and independence. These old-timers lingered in their shanties long after the gold diggings had been overgrown, and for many years they provided a link with the garish days of Victoria's early history. That link has rusted away, but Miss Aston has carried memories of it from her early life. These little studies of the township of Dingaroop and its folk are crowded with solitary eccentrics from many different countries and many different classes. There is Bruce, the educated Scot, who was trained for the church but lost faith in his calling and ended his life in a modest shanty with his dog and his bottle as companions. Franz Mueller, German Frankie, who left his country to escape military service and came to Victoria to grow flowers in peace. Brummy, the handyman from Birmingham, whose heart was bigger than anybody knew. And Cameron, the grumpy squatter, who went through life concealing the fact that he had been transported for poaching. There are a score of others, most of them misfits, all of them fierce individualists, whose eccentricities developed through solitude and the absence of the social ties with which they grew up. There will always be hatters, probably, just as there will always be hermits. The former are the Australian variety of the latter. A hatter is one who goes alone, who lives away from his kind in the depths of the bush or on the outskirts of an old goldfield, and who is not troubled with the progress of civilization. But the old-timer has gone. The lone gullies and creeks that he scoured and disfigured with his pick, shovel and puddling tub know him no more. He was one of the gold-fevered throng that swept across the state 69 and 70 years ago. To have been an actual digger on the goldfields in 1851 and 1852 was as proud a boast amongst these old men as it is nowadays to have been a digger of another kind in the landing at Gallipoli. I hope you found this collection of articles as interesting as I did. There are many more such recollections dispersed throughout the newspapers of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, describing this remarkable generation of the early gold rush with no small amount of sentiment. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.